equivalent there. We're going to start in Luke chapter 15, start with verse 13. I appreciate you guys being here this morning. I got a little nervous because I didn't see it, and so I kind of filled up. It was kind of good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next couple of weeks, I'm going to finish up, and this is my story, I hope, unless the Lord interrupts me again. And can you guys hear me?
No.
Nope. I can't hear myself. Check. In the next couple of weeks, hopefully we be wrapping up This Is My Story, and trying to get it. I'm trying to look here. I'm on. I was going to talk. You guys can figure it out. Whenever. In the last few weeks, I remember what last week's was. Let's say yesterday. Last week's was the woman with the issue of blood, right? And how she had been hemorrhaging for 12 years, and we asked the church, "How long are you going to continue to hemorrhage? How long are you going to continue to be sick the same way you've been sick? How long are you going to continue to be in the same condition before you try something different?" I was very amazed Wednesday night. I haven't been in a youth service in a long time, and to have them all come to the front and they sang every song as loud as they could sing it. And I can't remember who came back there and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Can you imagine if our adults would worship that way?" I don't know if they said it to me, I apologize. Was it Matthew? And I came and tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Can you imagine if our adults would worship God that way and sing as loud as they could?" Listen, it has nothing to do with the volume, but it has to do with your heart. And if we can you imagine how it would change the atmosphere?
That's right.
I'm having a little issue here, sorry. Can you imagine the difference it would make, not only in just the service, but in your life, if you would just pour your heart out to the Lord? Now, I don't know that all 15 or 16 of those kids would go home and get in a fight and cuss somebody out. I don't know. I don't have any idea. But I know for that hour and a half, they were focused on what God was doing in their life. And last week, I was preaching about the woman with the issue of blood, and I preached it the way I've never preached it before, and I don't think I've ever heard it that way before, about God is the God of do-overs.
Amen.
He's not a God of second chances, He's a God of do-overs. Because many of us, if He was just a God of second chances, we'd still be lost.
Right.
Because we needed a whole lot more than two chances.
Oh, yeah.
We needed a whole lot more than just two chances, because God is a God of do-overs. This morning I'm going to talk to you about the prodigal son just a little bit, and I did some deeper studying than just reading it out of Luke. For years I've just read the story out of Luke, and I've never really done any deeper study other than that. But there's a lot more to that story than just simply a story that Jesus tells. There's a whole lot more to that story than that my son was once lost and now is found. It's a whole lot more than just the coin and sweeping the floor trying to find the coin. There's a whole lot more to that than the lost sheep. There's a whole lot more to those stories than just that. And as I was researching this week, and and it's really hard for me. Y'all need to pray for me. This week marks my 7th year as being pastor here. Today is my 7th year of being pastor here today. And for 7 years, thank you for your enthusiasm. But for 7 years, it's been that long. Lord, get rid of him. Okay. And so this marks our 7th year today, service-wise. And okay. I don't want to break it because I'm fat. Okay, so listen. But for 7 years, I've had to do both. I've had to be the tortilla guy and the pastor guy. And I'm not 42 anymore.
Right.
And so now I'm the tired tortilla guy and the tired pastor guy. And so y'all pray that God makes a way that that I can do something different with that. It's long enough, and it's long enough. And I just need some help in that area. I know you guys don't have any issues, but I have issues walking away from money. I don't know if you guys have any issues with that or not. I have issues with that. Well, you're like the rich young ruler. Yeah, so are you. If that's not true, just give somebody all your money. Walk away from your house and walk away from everything you have.
That's right.
So listen, so I need some prayer in that area.
Amen.
For 7 years, I stood behind this pulpit. 7 years I've come to this church as pastor, not just as a member or as Jeff. Is it 7 years? 7. The 14th, I know it this week. Sorry, Gil. But I looked up some things. One thing I looked up was prodigal. We look at the church, we look at prodigal. Oh, wasteful, wicked. Prodigal in the Webster Dictionary says exceedingly or reckless, wasteful. But it also says this: extremely generous, extremely abundant, a spendthrift. That's what prodigal means. Prodigal, whatever, how you say that word, prodigality, reckless wastefulness, abundant generosity, and extreme abundance. Now, 2 of those 3 things we pray for all the time.
Amen.
I dare say that most people sitting underneath my voice this morning have prayed for an abundance, that they can be generous. Help me just a little bit today. We'll get you out of here, and I'll mess you up and I'll put you back together. Okay? The prodigal son was reckless. Yes, he was. And wasteful. Of course he was. But he was extremely generous and also extremely abundant if we go by what the Word of God says, prodigal, and what the dictionary says prodigal means. Prodigal doesn't just simply mean he was an evil, wicked young man that left his father in the lurch and he was just horrible young man. The Bible doesn't say he was a horrible young man. The Bible says that he asked for what belonged to him. He didn't ask for anybody else's. He asked for his loaf. Come on now, y'all get with me today. Y'all wake up! He asked for his loaf. Remember a few weeks ago I said that Jesus has a loaf just for you. It's not a part of somebody else's loaf, and you're not being greedy by taking all of your loaf, and you're not helping anybody else by leaving part of your loaf. It's just for you. As I was studying this, I said last week, but last week means for the last several weeks I've been studying to present this to you so you'll have an idea what I'm talking about. When I talked about the loaves, then I started writing down this. It's because I want you to know it all connects together. It's not just a sermon here, a sermon here, a sermon here. It all connects together. And so I want you to understand that you have your own loaf and you're not helping Micah by not taking all of your loaf. She's not eligible for your loaf. Right. Only you are eligible for your loaf. And when you say loaf, what are you talking about? We're talking about the showbread in the tabernacle. And the showbread, there was not one big loaf separated between 12 tribes. It was 12 different loaves. And so, same way as 12 different loaves for each tribe, each person has their own loaf that God has given you for your own consumption. Okay? So I'm just going to give you a little background for that. Okay? So the prodigal son was reckless. Of course he was reckless. Was he wasteful? Of course he was wasteful. Was he extremely generous? I don't know. Was he extremely abundant? I don't know. But here's the thing. Reckless and wasteful. He said, Father, give me the portion that falls to me. He didn't say, Father, give me my brother's portion. I've heard people dog this young man. I've preached him where I dogged this young man and said, he was reckless and he was all these things. I've dogged him in several sermons that I've preached over my lifetime. And he said, Father, give me the portion that falls to me. Not anybody else, but to me. Give me what you said I could have. Pentecostals, listen, look at me, Pentecostals, look at my nose. How many have said, every promise in the book is mine, every chapter, every verse, every line? How many have said, that maybe you haven't said it that way, but you meant it that way? Because it's all yours, right? Because God said it's yours. So how come we call Him evil, but us good? Father, give me what falls to me. Give me my portion. Give it all to me now. Give it to me, God. You can't handle it right now. You think you need a new house. Really what you need is to learn how to tithe. You really need a new car. No, you need to learn how to take care of the one you got before God will give you a new one. Well, it's quiet up in here. Really, you don't need all that you have been, all that you say you need. You need to learn how to be a steward of what God's already given you, and God will increase your stewardship. All right. He said, give me what you said I could have. Give me my want. What is it that you want? Most of the time when you say, and you put a truth serum in somebody, if you say, what do you want? It'll be a physical thing, not a spiritual thing. Come on. I want a new house. I want a new car. I want a new boat. I want a new whatever. Most folks, I want a new whatever they want. They want physical things. They don't want more of God. I was listening to a man named Ravi Zacharias. Anybody know who Ravi Zacharias is? I love Ravi! Ravi's so smart. He makes me feel so stupid. I love Ravi. He said he got a phone call. Wrong. It was Francis Chan. Francis, see it? When I start naming names, I get them wrong. That's why I never name names. Francis Chan got a phone call from one of his, the reason I got it wrong was one of the pastors in India called him after we had another American pastor fall. Had a big church, and I don't know who it is, you don't know who it is, it doesn't matter. We had another fall. We had another pastor fall in the United States. Pastoring a large church, but had another sexual indiscretion and did something wrong. That's a good way of saying he cheated on his wife, okay? And so he gets a phone call from this pastor, and this pastor is crying and weeping on the phone. He said, I don't understand you Americans. It's like, what do you mean? He said, he's thinking back to where Moses was going up to the mountain, and God said, don't let anybody even touch the bottom of the mountain, or you have to stone him or shoot him with an arrow. Took him to that passage. He said, Moses was going up to the mountain to talk to God. And God wanted the people to see it so much that He let a cloud fall down, and when Moses would speak, and then thunder, it sounded like thunder coming when God would speak, and then Moses would speak, and then God would speak. And it was such an amazing event that they said, don't even let anybody come up the mountain until I call for them, because if they even touch the mountain, I want you to kill them, Moses. Does anybody remember that? Okay. And he said, so you can go to God anytime now. He said, I think, honestly, Americans would rather take a selfie with Moses than meet with God. And he said, I'm not trying to be judgmental, but he's weeping and he's crying. He said, why don't we want to be in the presence of God? Why do we choose to be in the presence of somebody we think has been in the presence of God, but refuse to be in God's presence? And that struck me hard. Why is it that we want to be in the presence of somebody and hear somebody preach that we feel like has been in the presence of God, but yet we don't want to be in the presence of God ourselves? Well, it's quiet. It's quiet. Father, give me the portion that falls to me. Give me what you said I could have, every chapter, every verse, every line. Give me my wants, give me my desires. God, give me what I think I can handle. See, we all think we can handle it. If God gave you money today, you think you can handle that. If God gave you a new house today, you think you can handle that. You think you can handle the pressure of God giving you a position in the church. You think you can handle it? You honestly really believe that you can do it better than anybody else. And so you think, there's nothing wrong with that. You should think that you can handle things. You should have confidence in yourself. You should have confidence in God. That I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. We should have that confidence. But sometimes we think that if God just gives us everything that He has said we could have, all my troubles would be over. That is so crazy talk. That is such crazy talk. Your troubles began when you're having to deal with people. Just letting it out. See, I didn't know how easy it was to go to church and go home. That's kind of nice. I'd like to try that again in about 20 years. To go to church and go home. And never think about it again until the next church service. You know how cool that would be? That'd be awesome. I didn't say not think about God, I said think about church. And I just show up and the lights are on and the water's out there and everything's ready to go. You know how cool that would be? But that's not where I'm at right now. That's cool. I'm good with that. You know how awesome it would be to not have to worry about whether Hannah's mom and dad are living for God and I want them to, and whether Aaron's parents, and I worry about them and I worry about them constantly. How awesome it would be to not have to worry about David and Lisa and Dean and Billy, and you know how awesome that would be? But that's not the calling that God has on my life. And I'm not just they're not the only ones to worry about, so don't get all mad at me. But you think about that for just a second. It's always on my mind and in my spirit. It's always on my mind and in my spirit. And I gotta, God, touch Aaron today, touch Hannah today. They're in school today. God bless them today. Lord, touch David and Lisa, God, today. Let their son come back to God today. Let their son come back to God today. Dean, God, let touch them and bless them and let his children. I mean, that stuff happens all the time. That's in my spirit 24 hours a day. So when I walk by you at Walmart and I don't wave at you and you get mad at me, it's not because I don't love you, it's because I'm thinking about 27 things at one time. So don't get mad at me about that. There's nothing wrong with you coming hitting me in the arms and say, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. If I walk by you and then someone say hi, doesn't mean I don't like you. It means I wasn't paying attention. I had other things going on, so listen, I'll go on. Number 2 is, he got the possessions while he was still in his father's house. Let me just share something with you. Y'all are quiet today, and I'm going to preach this anyway. And I'm going to preach my voice out probably. But listen to me. You can't have his possessions outside of his house. That's where you get them. You get the possessions of your father in your father's house. Let's check this out. I want to share something with you. Now we have in here 130 whatever people. I don't know what it is. So let's guess. I'm just guessing. Okay? And here's probably 100 and whatever. Okay. Guesstimation. And in that time of 7 years, there's been a lot of people come and go in here. And in that time of 7 years, there's been a lot of people that God has blessed. God has multiplied, God has given them stuff, and God has been a blessing to them, and they've walked away from God because they couldn't handle what God had given them. Even though they had been blessed of God, and God gave them their blessing, and God blessed them with everything that they ever desired and ever wanted, it was easy to walk away from God because, I don't know why. But they got the blessing in the house of God. They got the Father's blessing in the Father's house. You don't get the Father's blessing sitting on your couch. Help me just a minute. I don't know where I'm even at. But he left his possessions before. He had his possessions before he left. He was given the possessions in the Father's house. He stayed in the Father's house a few days with the possessions. What do you mean? When God blesses you and God gives you things, for a while you think, I can't do this without God. But then you start thinking, I can do this without anybody. I can do this without anything. I don't need my Father. I got all this stuff. I've got his glory. I've got his anointing. I've got his power. I've got his Spirit. I don't need to be in God's house. I can do this on my own. You know what happens? You grow cold in your spirit and things begin to dry up. I promise you, you let a little bitty thing come into your life, before long, a little cuss word will slip out. Before long, a little sip of a drink will show up. Before long, you'll be back in the same situation you were in before. Before you ran to the Father and said, Father, give me everything that belongs to me. Every promise in the book is mine. Every chapter, every verse, every line.
Amen.
I want it all, God. And God said, I don't really think you need all that right now. You said in your word. Okay? And He begins to give you things. The things that happen are this, that things begin to take control of your life. There's so many people that they don't intend ever to slip out. They never intend to slip out of church. They never intend to slip out of the Father's house. They never intend to get back in the same situation they were in. They never intend for their marriage to fail. They never intend for their children to be gone. They never intend for any of that to happen. They never intend for all the bad things that happen in their life to happen. But they forget where the source comes from. The young man stayed in the Father's house until the blessing that God gave him felt like it was his own blessing. We get so comfortable. We get so comfortable. As a musician and as a singer and as a whatever I am, I'm going to talk about me. We start feeling like we can do it without God because I can do that. That's not hard. Oh, that's just 4 chords. I can do that. And it becomes old hat. It becomes just a routine. Oh, yeah, it's okay. Oh, yeah, that's a good enough song. We'll sing that. It becomes familiar. The blessing that God gave you. Can I just share with my friends that are up here on the stage? Can I just share? We are so blessed.
Amen. Amen. Yes, ma'am.
That we have the ability to do what we do.
Amen.
And there's so many people that are sitting out there going, I wish I could just play the radio without static on it, you know? And you're able to play 3 instruments and sing and carry a tune. That we are so blessed that God has chosen us to represent Him through music and through song. We're so blessed. But it becomes my job. It becomes, I'm going to bless somebody. Not without God, you're not. Not without God, you're not. And I can speak to that because that's what I do. I can talk about me. I don't get mad at me. He took possession of the possessions.
Amen.
What do you mean? He took it like it was his gift. It was his gift. It was his. But he forgot where the gift came from.
Amen.
It's mine. It's mine. Is it? Or is that a loan from God? He felt comfortable taking what he was given. I'm not saying you should not be comfortable with what God gave you. And I'm not saying that God won't give you great things and you're not a blessing. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this. Remember who gave you the gift.
Amen.
Remember where it came from. Remember where you got it. I didn't get it out on the street. I got it here. I got it in the Father's house. It was given to him because it was his birthright. What belongs to him? Why did it belong to him? Because he was his son. For no other reason. Because he was his son. How many sons and daughters of God do I have in the house? Okay. You have things from God by birth. New birth, rebirth, born again. You have things that God will give you because you're his. And that's the only reason. There's no other reason but because you're his. And so he took possession of what he was taking. Listen, he was his by birthright. He did not steal anything. It was his. He did not take his brother's possession. It was his. He didn't ask for anything that wasn't his. He simply took what belonged to him. Is there anything wrong with that? I don't think so. However, back in the 80s, there was a band called Loverboy. Anybody know Loverboy? They had a song called Too Much, Too Soon. Too much, too soon. You can have all that you want from God, but sometimes you have to wait a minute. You can have everything you want from God, but sometimes you got to sit and learn. You can have anything you want from God, but sometimes you have to put chairs out before you get to do anything else. You can have anything you want from God, but sometimes you have to put chairs up instead of doing what you want to do. Sometimes you have to vacuum the floor when everybody else leaves. Sometimes you got to put tables out. And sometimes you got to wait for the company to get here so they can roll up the inflatables and you can make sure they get gone in time. Sometimes you have to do the grunt and hard work. Sometimes you got to cook hamburgers for 3 hours. Sometimes you got to make hot dogs for 2.5, 3 hours. Sometimes you have to make them and put them on buns, and sometimes you just have to serve. And I don't care how special you think you are. Sometimes you just have to serve. Because if you get too much too soon, you forget where it came from. When did the famine come? When did it come? When he had spit on. When the blessing had run out, famine came. When blessing ran out, famine came. He had too much too soon because, see, Daddy knew how to handle the fortune. Because Daddy had made the fortune. Daddy knew what it took to get it. And Daddy knew what it took to keep it. But he didn't know what Daddy knew. He hadn't been down the road like Daddy had been down the road. He hadn't seen it grow from a small thing to a large thing. You see, he didn't know exactly what it took to make what it was that he had now taken possession of. See, we understand that Jesus died for us. We get it. We understand that. We understand that Jesus died for us each individually. I hope you understand that. Amen. Not just as a group, but as an individual, our own loaf. I hope you understand when you say yes to Jesus, that is respect, that is showing of Jesus dying on a cross for you. Not us'ns, but you'ns.
Amen.
Yes, he did die for all, but he also died for me. Okay, I want you to get that in your spirit, okay? Listen. Daddy knew how to handle it. Daddy had many hired servants to handle it. He had him. With me? You can't handle what God has for you by yourself. You can't do it. You can't do it. Daddy saved some in reserve. Because Daddy knew famine's coming. At some point, there's going to be a low time. At some point, I'm going to have some in reserve. At some point, I'm going to have to lay hands on myself and pray for myself because famine's coming. At some point, I'm going to have to preach to myself because nobody want to hear me. At some point, I got to anoint my head with oil. I got to lock myself in someplace. I got to pray it through. At some point. At some point. Church, Pentecostal Church, God's Assembly, Oklahoma, Temple of Praisers. When are we going to pray it through? Not pray for stuff, but pray it through. Pray it through. I don't even understand the terminology. I know. It's sad that most people don't even know what that means. Pray it through means you pray until you're through praying. You pray until something breaks. You pray until they ain't you praying no more. You pray until you can't pray no more. You pray until there's nothing left in you to pray. You pray and you pray and you pray and you seek God, and you seek God and let God move in your life. That's what praying through is. Praying through is you don't care how many likes you got on your, I'm praying, click, hashtag something, praying through. I like on that. Come on, man. Don't nobody care. Pray it through. Spend some time. We go, I don't have that much time, Brother Jeff. I understand. You gotta, man, there's nothing like praying through.
Come on. Get preaching.
There's nothing like being in the presence of God.
Amen.
I told you the story. I told you the story about Francis Chan and the guy that his pastor called him from India. I told you about that. And took you back to the verse where God was interceding with Moses, and the Bible says that Moses saw God face to face. Like, and you understand? Come on, guys, look at me. Do you know you have that opportunity right now? Right now, I can go before God, and I can speak before Him face to face. I don't have to go to a mountain. I don't have to climb up anything. I don't have to get in my prayer tent. I can fall on my face no matter where I'm at, and I can cry out to God and say, God, I need you no matter what is going on in my life. I can cry out to Him face to face. I can meet with Him, and we look at that like it's no big deal, and it is a big deal. We look at that like, oh, everybody can do that. It's no big deal. Oh, I did that. Oh, I did it, whatever. And it is a big deal that the God of all universe, the God who created the whole universe, the God who created you, the God who did everything, the God who sent His Son to die for you, is just waiting for you to spend a little time with Him, and will stand there as long as you want to say, and talk to Him. He will talk to you. And the only time He ever leaves is when you say amen. That God, can you imagine that it was such a big deal that Israel had to stand at a mountain and watch? And we just go, I'll pray when I get time. I forgot to pray today. I'll spend 5 minutes with God this morning. I forgot to pray today. I forgot to pray. And then Israel, it was such a big deal for Israel. They couldn't even touch the mountain that God was on, or they had to be stoned to death.
Come on. Good preaching.
Come on.
Amen.
Jesus.
All
And too much too soon. It's too much too soon. Extremely generous. I'm going to read this. I believe it's verse. I messed up and didn't read it earlier. I forgot. Verse 13, Ethan. It's for the New King James. It said, not many days after the younger son gathered all together, he took his journey to a far country. And this Bible says in New King James that there he wasted his possessions with prodigal living. Not just riotous living, but prodigal living. Prodigal doesn't mean he was evil. He may not have been the smartest young man, but he lived with prodigal living. One of the attributes of prodigal living is extremely generous. There's nothing wrong with being generous, but there's something wrong with being generous to the point that you put yourself in the poorhouse. There's nothing wrong with being extremely generous, but there's something wrong with you not being able to meet your financial needs because you feel like you feel guilty because you didn't give somebody $5 when you didn't have $5. That's not generous. That's being wasteful. That's being prodigal. But he had spent all. He wasted. He'd given away. He lived an abundant lifestyle. And when he had spent all, he spent it like there was no end to the supply. He spent it like he was still at his father's house. But when you remove yourself from the Father's house, there becomes an end. I believe that God is merciful. And I believe that God is long-suffering. But there is an end. There's a young man I used to preach with. Him and his wife, and had 3 boys. And we preached with him, me and Billy. We went and did youth revivals all over the stinking place. And at some point, he decided to leave the Father's house. His marriage is gone. His boys are in trouble all the time. Drugs, alcohol. For a time period, he struggled in some of those areas. There's a time when the blessing gets cut off and a famine rises in the land.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
There's a time when you forget that it's the Father that is the supply,
Amen.
not the gift. There's a time that you have to show up and you have to say, you know what, God, you're my reason for being here. You're the reason I love this. You're the reason. But he spent all there was, like there was an endless supply, without his Father. There's never an endless supply of blessing without God. There's not an endless supply without God. He was spending like he was still in the Father's house while he was separated from the Father. He tried to do what only his Father could do.
Amen.
And I'm talking to some church folks today that you're under so much stress. You're about to break and you don't know what's going to happen in your life. You are so stressed. You're too stressed to be blessed. You don't know what's going on now. You don't know what to do next. You're just broken and you're putting on a good front. But if the wrong person says the wrong thing, man, it's on.
That's right.
You're so stressed. One of the reasons is because you placed yourself in the middle where God is supposed to be.
Amen. Amen.
Remove yourself from the middle. You're not God. You're God's child.
Amen.
You're God's child, but you're not God. You have His attributes. You're generous. You have abundance. But without the Father, we spend wickedly or recklessly, and we spend without thinking. Without the Father, I'm about to get done. He joined himself to a citizen of that country. And this always bugged me in this story. Why would he join himself to a citizen of a country during a famine instead of just going home? And it always bugged me. Why would somebody give him a job in the middle of a famine? Because we're talking about farmers with animals. And there's no rain and there's no food, there's no jobs. You with me? And it always bothered me until I did some research about being prodigal. So this has to be somebody he was generous to at some point. Because they felt obligated to give him a job. Even though there wasn't any jobs to be had. You with me? Okay. So this person felt obligated to give this young man a job when really there was no reason for him to have a job because he's giving him corn husk for the pigs. Not even corn. Husk. They're trying to keep the pigs alive, but they had this young man feeding the pigs so he had some room and board, he had a place to stay. And he joined himself to that country, person of that country. There's a great famine. There was no jobs during the extreme famine. He joined someone he had history with. Somebody had history with him. Someone that he had joined was someone he knew. He knew where to find them. What are you talking about, Brother Jeff? In my Bible, it says that he joined himself to a citizen of that country. So he knew where to find somebody he thought he could join. With me?
Amen.
He found somebody that owed him something. Okay.
Come on.
Jesus, help me. I'm about done. He said, I would have filled my belly with the husk. I would have filled my belly with what they had. But during the famine, nothing grows. This citizen had something of great value. What was that? Something to eat. But he wouldn't share it. Because the Bible says that I would have filled my belly with the husk that they gave the pigs, but nobody gave me anything. Now wait a minute. This is a young man who was prodigal, right? He was abundant, he was generous, and he spent recklessly. So at some point he gave somebody something. And now he's in need and nobody will give him anything. Oh, Jesus.
Come on, praise God.
You can be the best of the best in the church. You can be the best of the best outside the church. You can do all that thing. But at some point in your life, you're going to need somebody and they're not going to listen. And they don't give you anything. This is what he says. I love it. Where am I at? I don't know where I'm at here. Let's see. During nothing that grows. Okay. He given nothing. Okay, verse 17. And he said, when he came to himself, I'm talking about extremely abundant. Church, I want you to look at me for just a second. Listen, it's just now 12 o'clock. And I'll do my best to get you out here in 10 minutes. Some of you need to know who you are.
Amen. Come on.
You need to realize who you are. See, you're not your job.
Amen.
That's not who you are. Jesus. He remembered who he was. He was who? The offspring of abundance. Because in my Father's house of service I have plenty to eat, and I sit here starving. There's plenty in my Father's house. He was the offspring of abundance. That's who you are. He wasn't poor, but he was living in poverty. He wasn't poor, but he was living as a poor person. He wasn't in lack of food, yet he was starving to death.
Right.
What do you mean by that? He wasn't like a food. Not at his daddy's house he wasn't. Not where he belonged he wasn't. He was just sitting at the wrong table. How many times have you sat at the wrong table? He wasn't a hired servant. But he placed himself in the wrong position. That's all I am. I'm just a hired servant. That's all I am. No, you're not. You're more than that. You're more than that. He decided to take his rightful place. He said, I'll go to my Father. He repented for trying to be only what the Father can be. See, I preached this Wednesday, and I'm going to throw this at you. When we submit to God, we submit to His will.
That's right.
Submit to God. Submit to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you.
Right.
But the first thing is to submit to God.
Right.
So if I submit to God, then I have to submit to His will.
Right.
And so if I repent and say, God, I submit to you, then I have to submit to His will. Come on. Listen. He said, I will go to my Father. He repented for trying to be what only God the Father can be. He wanted to return to his Father's house, but not in the right position. Listen, I'm going to talk to you guys real quick. Don't come to God saying, I'm nothing but a worm. Amen. God made worms, and they don't look like you. You can come to God and say, I'm a jerk, because maybe you were. You can come to God and say whatever. But don't lower yourself and say, I'm not worthy. Listen, don't you tell God who you are. What do you mean? Let God speak speaking to you who you are. Don't you speak to God who you are. Let God speak who you are. I don't know how you sit there and look like you're bored, but I feel like I'm in a Baptist church this morning. And I don't mean that bad, it's just quiet. Listen. He was extremely generous to this young man, the father was. He saw him a great way off. Means he was looking for him. He ran to him as fast as he could go. He gave him not some tattered robe, but the best robe. He didn't give him some dented up, beat up ring. He gave him the best ring. He put sandals on his feet, not something, he didn't put some junk on his feet, but sandals on his feet. He showed extreme abundance. He made the fatted calf. He fed everybody for a family situation.
Amen.
Come on, man. To eat and be merry. He fed everybody because he wanted everybody to celebrate a family matter.
Amen.
The prodigal son. When we think prodigal, we think wasteful and sinful. Because we look at the word riotous and we think he's righteous. But we don't take that step further and study it at all and see what it really was. Maybe you're here today and you're a prodigal. Maybe you were too generous. Maybe you lived a too abundant life. Maybe you were reckless and wasteful. And maybe your life is just not what you thought it would be. Maybe you're hoping the famine will leave. Maybe you're hoping that the famine's over and it's all over with. Maybe you're sitting there in these pews today and you're hoping that something's going to change without me having to come to myself and realize who I really am. Well, who are you? I'm a child of abundance.
That's right.
In my Father's house, there's plenty of food.
Yes.
In my Father's house, there's plenty to drink. There's plenty to eat. There's plenty. And I'm not a servant there. I'm a son.
Yes.
Amen.
In my Father's house, He loves me so much that He's looking for me to come home. In my Father's house, I've got the best robe to wear. I've got new sandals. I've got a ring on my finger. I've got all these things. In my Father's house, we haven't stayed.
Right.
Right.
In my Father's house, we're having all these things. But I've got to come to myself first. Maybe you're too embarrassed to come to God today. Maybe you're too embarrassed to come to the Father. I don't know. Maybe you have to come to yourself, but you just can't come home. You just can't come home. Maybe you thought you had it all together. Came to find out you didn't have it all together. Maybe you just thought it will always be good. And it's not. Maybe you'd seen the Father do it, so why can't I do what the Father does? I've got the same attributes. I'm His son. We're all prodigal. And forget the Father is our source. He's the source of our provision. And without Him, we're all prodigal. Because we're all wasteful. And we're all reckless. Without Him.
Amen.
Won't you come home today? Come home today. Ethan, we're not going to play that. My wife and I were listening to this song. I love that song, Home, by Blake Shelton. Anybody know that song? It's not a Christian song and you know it? Yeah. I know some Aussie songs too. Listen. Ethan, play a little bit of it. I love this song. I tear up at this song every time I ever do. Listen. I don't know where you're at today, but you need to come home. It's time to come home.
Another summer day has come and gone away, and ever so long, but I want to go home.
Aren't you ready?
Maybe surrounded by a million people, I still feel all alone. I want to go home. Oh, I miss you. I've been keeping all the letters that I wrote to you, each one a line or two. I'm fine, baby, how are you? I would sing enough.
It's way loud up here. Up there. Listen. Aren't you going to come home? Aren't you tired of faking it? Tired of it? Just tired of taking for granted what God's done for your life? I know that's pretty hard, pretty heavy. And I don't know what else to do. Just tell you that God loves you so much, He's waiting. He's waiting. Hey, you can play it, just play it aside. It's way loud up here, but just play it. It's time to come home, man. Don't allow the devil to keep you someplace that you don't need to be. You ever thought you'd hear Blake Shelton song today, did you? Or was it what you thought you were going to come to church? I just want to share with you.